If you talked to me back in 2016 and said, by 10 years from now, you're going to hit like $5 million in revenue or $1 million, I would have been ecstatic.
That's the thing about it. Now you're sitting here, you're at 18, and you're thinking about 50 or 100. Do you feel like you're always moving the goalpost?
Absolutely.
And do you think that's what being an entrepreneur is about?
I think, like, what else?
What else is there?
What else is there, right? Like, if you don't move the goalpost, like, what do you do? Like, exit and say, hey, I'm done. The number one question I get asked is, how do you find clients? Because they had just started an agency, they had started a consulting firm, a dev shop, and now they're looking for clients. You've missed the plot. The reason that you start an agency is because you have too much demand that you can't service it anyway. Right? You can't, it's really tough to do it the other way around.
So let's say today you lost everything. You had to build a $10 million business in Sri Lanka. How do you go about doing it? And what space do you pick and how long would it take you?
Do I lose all the people I know?
Yeah, you lose all the people, like wiped out, erased. I'm sticking you in Vietnam where you don't speak the language.
I think the best case would be the business that we started.
And now it's doing $1 million, right?
Rev, we do 10.
And that's a side hustle.
Yes, but Sri Lanka has had a really rough set of circumstances. And it's that kind of compounding bad decisions, right? And really a lot of this strife comes from like commercial situations that we've made poor decisions on. If I can help push that pendulum the other way, I think that's a pretty good outcome.
Hi, Bhanuka.
Hey, Rangan. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I'm really super grateful. I know you're a busy guy.
My pleasure. Not that busy, but I appreciate it.
So, listen, I mean, you built something quite remarkable by Sri Lankan standards, maybe even regional standards, right? Search. Can you take a few minutes? I know you've been asked this question 1,000 times, but just give us a sense of how big it is.
Yep.
Right? I think your CAGR numbers are really impressive. And, where it started and where you see it going.
Yeah. So I'll work backwards rather than kind of give you a full picture from the beginning. So we're about 10, 11 years in the business right now. And, the team has kind of grown and matured over time. I think we'll end this financial year with about 600 people in the business, which is it's a reasonable sized operation.
Sounds like 600 headaches.
At times. Even though we have 600 people, from a revenue side, we're still a small business. In a global sense, in Sri Lanka, I think they classify us as a mid-cap at this point. We'll probably end the year at about an $18 million-ish ARR.
That's no joke.
It's decent.
And you're what? You're barely 30.
I turned 30.
Weren't you Forbes under 30?
I was, but...
Was that a huge honor?
It was more of a surprise than it was an honor.
Big party?
No party, unfortunately.
No party?
No party.
Do you have like an award?
I have a t-shirt, but the really shitty part is, the really shitty part is they made you pay for the t-shirt.
That is shitty.
Yeah. And it doesn't fit as well because I may have kind of gotten a little bigger since then.
You know a t-shirt I still have that I love? I know it's kind of embarrassing. It's this t-shirt from NetJets that I got.
Oh my God. Okay.
My brother gave me. No pain, no plane. How? I mean, obviously I could never, but I could never wear that shirt outside. It's my go-to-bed shirt, but it's so big and it's really soft. It's like,
right.
It's like that really Pima cotton,
like if water falls on it,
yes,
see-through.
Very, very nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So 600 people.
Yep.
Right. $18 million. That's no joke. What's the next stage?
Oh man. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown of how we got there. So again, my background isn't really, I'm not an engineer.
Right.
My background was really marketing, and even that was very self-learned.
Right.
I always grew up playing video games, and I wanted to pursue a career as a YouTuber, which is never a fun conversation to have with like South Asian parents.
You wanted to be a doctor, if memory serves me right.
That's right.
Like all of us.
Yes. And
by the way, why do you think that is? Why is doctors considered the creme de la creme?
So I think I'll give it to you in the context of my parents.
Right.
So my grandparents were in a really shitty situation when they were growing up. My mom's side, dad died when she was in grade 7. Mom's mom was a teacher that raised a family of 5 as a single parent.
Wow.
Dad's side, dad's dad was a farmer, and dad's mom was not really kind of educated in the sense she was illiterate.
Right.
So that's kind of the family background, and they weren't from Colombo. Mom was from Gaul, dad was from Wallacemal, the South.
Right.
And for them, I think, they grew up a really rough life, and the only way that they were able to get out of that situation was through education.
Right.
And for what it's worth, Sri Lanka
we do emphasize our education.
We do. And if you come from nothing,
yes,
it is probably the single best ticket to get out of that situation.
You think it is the single best ticket globally, or just?
I think in Sri Lanka, at least, because if you look at kind of income prosperity and all of that stuff, a lot of that wealth is concentrated in like Colombo.
Yes.
So if you are out of Colombo, you need to figure out, and this is going to sound somewhat controversial, you need to figure out a way to get here.
Get to Colombo.
Yes.
Yep.
Because
100%.
Financially, you're going to struggle outside.
This is the New York City of Sri Lanka.
Basically, right? I think about 50% of GDP is in this one city.
Exactly right.
Even though something like 20% or 15% of the population is in that area.
Right.
So it makes sense to do that. And if you don't have education and there's no real clear pathway, especially if you don't have the right connections, if you don't have the right people, if you don't have the right skills, education is kind of the guaranteed way for you to get there. And when you look at the way education ranks the scoring system in Sri Lanka, medicine is at the top, right?
No, you have to be the best of the best.
And if you do that, it is a guaranteed ticket for you to say, look, you will not suffer, right?
Right.
Now, some may argue that medicine is a suffering of it.
So my wife's a doctor, so she suffers every day, but I got you.
Same here.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, right, she's a doctor, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is, look, I would still consider that suffering.
Yeah.
But from like my parents' point of view, it's being able to put food on the table and not.
Right.
And if you are able to get your children into medicine,
right,
there is some sort of safety mechanism to make sure that their future is kind of secured.
Right.
It may not be the most illustrious.
But do doctors make a lot of money in Sri Lanka?
No, but I think it's like this, right? Like all professions, there's a few people that make a killing.
Right.
Right. But from a government service point of view, I think your internship salaries are like 40,000, 50,000 rupees. And
that's about 1,200, 1,300 hours a month.
No, that's $150.
Wow.
Yeah. And
sorry, I forgot.
And if you are, once you qualify, once you become registrar, it slowly makes it up to $1,000.
Wow.
And then it caps.
Right.
And then after that, it's really private practice and your own skill in a commercial environment that lets you go away from 1,000 to, the really, like I remember at my mom's peak, she was Sri Lanka's first female OMF surgeon.
Oh, wow.
And even at her peak, she was clocking in maybe about 3-4K a month.
Wow. Which is pretty good.
Really good.
It's really good.
Right. But imagine
really good.
the climb to get there.
All right. She has to
it's ridiculous.
She has to be the Elon Musk of, surgeons, I would think.
Right. And for me, that was a really, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Right.
You think about, Monica, you think about what it took. My father grew up dirt poor. I had to take a bullock cart to school in Jaffna. But you think about what it took from somebody who had to draw water from the well, right? Use an outhouse to get to the West. It eclipses anything I could possibly do in terms of where you are and where you end up, and the human sacrifices people make, the abject sacrifice. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I mean, you probably seen it with your parents.
I did, and for me, even beyond the insanity that is a workload, like she raised 2 kids, right? She woke up in the morning at 5, cooked food for us so that we could take it to school, dropped us off at school, went to work.
Wow.
Came back, picked us up, dropped us back home, cooked lunch and dinner.
God, she
then
cooked it herself?
Yeah. And then she went to private practice afterwards, came back at like 9 p.m. to have dinner with us. And then she did that for like 20 years, right?
Wow. Wow. It sounds like she's a big influence in your life. Did you get your work drive from her or from your dad?
I think they're both a bit workaholic.
They're both workaholics.
Yeah. But I think like dad would only do the work stuff, right?
Right.
Like, but my mom had to balance that as well as everything else, right?
Yeah, no shits. Women have it, especially in this part of the world.
Yeah. So
Double duty.
I think that's insane.
It's insane.
I couldn't imagine doing that. Like today, even for me, right? Like even when I was building Surge, one of the benefits is like I didn't have any real risk, right? I wanted to pursue YouTube. Like even thinking that you want to pursue YouTube as a career is one hell of a privilege. Like what if it doesn't work out? Like all of that stuff's fine. I didn't have to pay rent. So I think the first year that I got into YouTube, I made something like $11. I still have that check, but that was a year's worth of work, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that my meals were provided for and that I didn't have to pay rent and kind of keep the family running was, one hell of a leg up, right?
Yeah.
I could build and I could focus on, what eventually became Surge.
Right.
The first year we, as we launched YouTube, the channel, we realized that, the video game product didn't really work for us.
Right.
YouTube shut us down from a monetization model and just said, look, we are going into commercial release and what you're doing is not working out. We're not including Sri Lanka as a part of this program. And essentially the business model ceases to exist.
Right.
We scrapped the whole project and start a new, and we were still.
Let me ask a question. Was that the low point in your life from a business perspective?
I've had a few.
We'll get back to this, but when have you really been kicked in the nuts?
I think the toughest point for me was during the 2022 financial crisis.
Right.
When we were running out of electricity.
Oh, God.
I
don't know how you run. I remember those times.
So get this, right?
Oh, my God.
We have clients at a global scale.
Right.
As much as they are empathetic.
Right. They're like, what is going on?
They can't risk. We take critical infrastructure projects into their companies.
Right.
And
I mean, can you talk about the place in the Middle East?
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
So I
don't know if it's confidential, but
so
you run Qatar's infrastructure, if I can.
Yes.
Which is a big deal.
We work with a few partners. Yeah. We do a lot of work for the Qatar government.
To get to that level.
But it was crazy because at one point it was us in a car with a power bank tied to a laptop, with the car charging the power bank,
right,
hoping that this thing doesn't collapse, right?
Right.
At the time I had about 350, 400 people on payroll.
Right. Wow.
And I'm wondering, and power going out was fine because we switched everyone to laptops, we bought a bunch of generators and we kind of ran with it. But at one point we had so little energy in the country that the cell towers started going off. So even though you had the laptop, you don't have internet access.
Wow.
So I'm just thinking what the fuck do we do, right?
Yeah, it's insane.
And
how do you run a business?
And I'm like, the service business is not a high margin business.
Right.
We maintain anywhere between 10, 20% NPs,
right,
20% in a really good year, 10% on average. If 3 large clients leave,
right,
we're done.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still responsible because these 400 people look up to you to make sure that you've built an environment that's safe and stable and all of that stuff, right? And I think that was probably the toughest thing because it wasn't a moment in time. It was it
just
drags on, right?
Yeah.
And every day it was slightly worse than the day before.
Do you ever think you would go belly up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought I'd go belly up at least 10, 15 times throughout the last 10 years.
I mean, that's another thing on entrepreneurs. We're always like, you're thinking we're going belly up or actually going belly up.
Yeah, and
right. That's which is worse, actually going belly up or thinking about it.
Look, and even though we are where we are today,
right?
It's not like we have hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, right? We don't have
this. Otherwise, we'd be doing this on a private jet too. Someplace really Monaco, right?
Yeah.
Someplace fun.
But. And I think this is something that most people looking at it from the outside don't understand, that just because you have, you've built a business, as a founder, your equity is essentially in the business. You have some sort of valuation on paper, but it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And
You are the business.
yes,
So how is it, let's go back to raising. I know we're jumping around here, but let's say you are the business because you are the face of the business. You built a great personal brand. You're Nectar Island, right? So you've hobnobbed, people say, oh, Monica, he's great friends with Branson, they're best friends. I'm like, okay, cool.
bit of a stretch.
No, but it's cool. Listen, I respect it. He seems like an ultra cool guy. But how do you raise capital if somebody says, let's say you wake up one day and you want to be like Elon,
Yeah.
and you want to go, I don't know, into politics, right? You want to fix all these problems.
Yeah.
How do you convince an investor or your capital providers that that's not something you're going to do?
I mean, that's not something I'm going to do.
Or how do you prevent against it? How do you, in a services business, right? It feels like, you said you're not a coder or an engineer. It feels like you're doing a lot of the sales. I think I remember you saying, when it's $1 million client, you're probably coming there, getting involved. If you're taking capital from investors, because you probably needed capital, I'm sure, at several points, how does a capital provider feel like Bhanuka is not going to get up and go run the country or go find a shiny new thing? Or I don't know, there's a lot of opportunity here, right? How do you protect yourself against that?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, in full disclosure,
Right.
I have chased a lot of shiny things, right? And I think I've been fortunate enough in terms of the capital providers that I've worked with understand me as a human being.
Right.
I wouldn't, which is why I haven't listed, right? Like it's not like public shareholder funds. I think once you kind of take someone's money, you have a fiduciary responsibility to deliver results.
100%.
Right.
It's a big obligation. I don't think enough founders realize that you do not take that lightly. You don't want, it's their life savings. It could be a pension, it could be an endowment. Absolutely.
So it's very important to be absolutely clear with the expectations. I think, I've had 5-10 different businesses that have gone on to raise funds.
Right.
Some of them have investor overlaps, some of them don't.
Right.
The work that has worked really well for us is that, we've had a history now, a 10-year window,
Right.
where we have said we will do certain things and we have done it.
So you've always hit your numbers?
Sometimes we've gone over, sometimes we've gone under, but the early stage, the amounts of capital we raised was so small.
Yeah.
That even if
it was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the first three.
I mean, you were essentially bootstrapped.
Yes. Roughly.
I
Right.
mean,
If you say 300 and so the initial real check was 300 grand.
right. I didn't know if you wanted people to know.
Oh, no. So
it's 360 grand for 51% of the company.
Yep.
Which means the post money was, 700 and change, like nothing.
And that was an insanely large amount of money for us at the time.
Yeah. I mean, was that a large amount of money for Sri Lanka at the time?
Yes. I think, what is that? I think the dollar was about 200 to maybe 70 million rupees, which is a lot.
No, that's me. That's real.
Right? Like if you look at it from the salary of a doctor's perspective, for
Right.
example, that's 10 years of salary.
Yep.
So it is considerable.
Yeah.
Right? But I think early on the bet is on the founder,
Right.
not the forecast, right? Because you and I know that you can say whatever you want to do in your forecast.
Garbage in, garbage out.
And it doesn't mean anything, right? I didn't know we were going to grow as quickly as we did. If you talked to me back in 2016 and said, you're going to hit, by 10 years from now, you're going to hit like $5 million in revenue or $1 million, I would have been ecstatic.
Right.
I would have thought that was amazing.
But
right?
now, that's the thing, Monica. Now you're sitting here, you're at 18 and you're thinking about 50 or 100.
Yeah.
Right? Do you feel like you're always moving the goalpost?
Absolutely.
And do you think that's what being an entrepreneur is about?
I think what else is
What else is there?
What else is there, right? Like if you don't move the goalpost, like
Right.
what do you do? Like exit and say, hey, I'm done.
Right.
And I'm totally fine with the idea of exiting, right? I'm not emotionally attached to the business. And I've obviously wrestled with this idea because I've gotten offers to serve. And to me, the question is, okay, I exist. Like, what do I do next? I'm not going to retire.
Right. You could start a search fund. You could start a venture fund.
Sure. But really what happens is you start building a team.
Right.
And then you realize the team composition is very similar to the team you have today.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, well, this is like extra steps to get back to where I am today.
That's a fair point.
And what I've been able to do is, with a lot of restructuring, with a lot of
Yeah.
conversations, I'm kind of convince my investors that, hey, look, we should play the role in that venture fund type environment where we're not just a service provider. We'll take equity risk. We'll build our own products. We'll kind of
Right.
become somewhat of an investment vehicle. And part of the reason is that because I kind of have that itch that I want to scratch.
Right.
And the other shareholders are, look, he hasn't screwed it up so far.
Right.
So as long as you're doing it in a controlled environment where you're not setting the house on fire,
Right.
that seems like an okay amount of risk to take.
Right.
But that was after 10 years of them seeing that journey and seeing
You
that growth.
delivered.
And I think, we had gone through a lot of maturity
Right.
to the point where, very few, but we share quarterly reports,
Right.
like a listed company, same way, same format,
Right.
CFO summary.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And
I wish more private companies did that.
but you have to, right?
It's just discipline, right? You should be communicating to your investors at least quarterly.
Yes.
Not just a snapshot.
And look, like we have a report that, tracks our pipeline, tracks our the three big ones, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement, and gives some sort of indicative number. So at least quarter on quarter, they have guidance as to where the business is headed. And the way I look at it is that I'm an investor in the public market.
Right.
So I like to think of the terminal event is the public business.
Right.
At some point, whether you get acquired by PE or something happens, you eventually go public.
And would you like to see Surge public?
I would not mind. The only reason,
How many years do you think?
I think if it's Sri Lanka, we're ready now.
Right, but you don't want to list on this exchange.
But
There's no liquidity.
There's some liquidity.
Right.
I think it's improved quite a bit over the years. And my issue is, as a Sri Lankan, I choose to live here. Right.
Let me actually, you know what? I do have a question. If you're, as a Sri Lankan, you choose to live here, would you live here over anywhere else?
I think, I've decided to.
No, but why?
I think that I would not have been able to build what I built. Maybe I could have built something better. I don't know.
Right.
So
Like, let's say you were in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Let's say you had gone to Stanford. You think you would have done something similar, something different?
We're kind of hypothesizing on, like unlimited option, right? Like you roll the dice. It could,
Right. Yeah.
It could have been better. It could have been worse.
You could have just been a mid-level engineer at Microsoft,
Which would have
called it a day.
And
Getting stuck on traffic.
so I think the best way I look at it is like the circumstances of my life are where it is today.
Right.
And today I have enough resources to live anywhere else in the world I choose to.
Right.
I don't, because based on this environment today,
There's not a number two?
no, I don't think there's.
What if you were forced out of the country?
Ooh, okay, I suppose.
Yeah, let's say there's another, I don't know, meltdown, and you're like, I have to get out of Dodge, right?
Yeah, let's
Where do
say I
you
get
get-
exiled, right?
Let's say you get exiled.
I think the two countries, I have three options.
Mm-hmm.
The countries that make the most sense to me are probably Singapore, Australia, and the US.
Yeah.
In that order.
Yeah, Singapore's a good choice. I lived there in Singapore. Singapore's a good choice.
It's a wonderful country.
It's livable, clean, multicultural.
Yep.
Actually, I'm not sure people know this, but Lee Kuan Yew actually came to Sri Lanka many, many moons ago
I think
and structured his country over Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Why do you think Sri Lanka is where we are today and Singapore is killing it? Is it the Sri Lankans?
yes. Look, it is a series of bad choices compounded over time.
Right.
And, you make a series of good choices compounded over time, you realize how big that delta is, right?
Right. No, it's true. It's all about compounding. It's like interest.
And I think what people fail to recognize is that, like at the end of the day, you are responsible, right?
You mean as a CEO?
As a CEO, as an individual, is your contribution.
Exactly. You have to take maximum responsibility.
Yeah. And I think especially if you are going down the entrepreneurship route,
Right.
you need to be so comfortable with accountability, because you have to take responsibility for shit that's not even your fault, right?
Right.
Like the fuel crisis and shit going south, it's still on you.
No, I listen. 2 days ago, I think maybe right after we had dinner, our tech team told me that they had built a car without a steering wheel. Essentially, that's equivalent. And my instant reaction was, have you never seen a car? I mean, like, should I have to explain to you that you need something? I mean, I was literally flabbergasted. But what is getting upset about it going to do for anyone, right? As it's I picked the team, maybe I picked who knows? My responsibility. I got to figure out a solution.
And look, this is why we have a business.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can see your headache management to some degree.
Essentially, yeah.
And talking about headache management, and I don't mean this to be in any way pejorative, but how do you deal with the Sri Lankan work ethic? Listen, I'm Sri Lankan.
Yep.
I love Sri Lankans. The people are lovely. They're very, very happy, right? But we have either the second or third largest number of holidays in the world. People are always at the beach. They're really fun people. They're the best.
I've been to I don't know, 30, 40 countries.
Yeah. They're like the happiest people, right? I mean, they're pretty happy.
Then, I think people are man, I hate this stuff because someone's going to clip a small piece of it and then post it.
It's okay. We'll just block them.
Look, I think if you want to build stuff, you kind of have to be a little miserable because you are by definition, not happy with the situation you're in.
Right.
And if you are, even if you go back to culturally, Buddhism, right?
Right.
The entire premise is love the things up to do and be happy with what you have.
Right.
And I think.
And non-attachment.
Yeah. I'm this is not anti-capitalist.
The most anti-capitalist religion.
You need to want more, which is the basis of capitalism.
Right.
And if you...
So will you ever be satiated?
Look, I think from a financial perspective,
right,
I'm already satiated. My quality of life, between us hitting 4 or 5 million in revenue in 18, it's the same.
No, I mean, you live pretty large.
Yeah, and look,
Monica was kind enough to let me stay at your villa on the water, which is absolutely next level. I felt like I was at an Aman combined with a Satai. There was a butler. I felt like a white man. I was like, this is what it must have been like to be a white Raj in Lord Mountbatten, back in the day, wandering around.
Look,
it was very nice. Thank you, by the way. It was very generous.
My pleasure.
You guys should book it. It's the Sixes. It's primo. Anyway.
Sponsored content. Look.
Because I could stay there for free next time. Again.
Yes. The beautiful thing is, and part of the reason I love living here is because there's obviously a cost arbitrage in living in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Your cost of living is relatively low.
Right.
So if I were to replicate my lifestyle in New York, I'd probably spend $1 million a year.
Yep.
And I have no interest in doing that.
No doubt.
Right. So I think because of the lack of capital,
right,
your opportunity is significantly greater.
Right.
So if you're willing to kind of put in the capital and the effort, you can build something today. From a productivity point of view, I think I've been to 30, 40 countries. I think Sri Lanka has the one where I felt the least productivity is Fiji, right? Also an island.
Right. And I can only imagine. Also kind of Indian, right? Indian origin,
yes.
50% of the island. Or
lovely people.
The nicest.
The absolute nicest people I've.
But they somehow built Fiji Water into a multi-billion-dollar brand.
They did, but that is also an American company.
I know that, but yeah.
We checked into the hotel. This is for a client visit. We're doing some work with some of the retailers there. We went into a client visit and check into the hotel, and they're they give you the welcome drink, and they just go off. Right? I'm I like to kind of, because I just came from a flight. The flight was delayed for 11 hours. I was stuck in Changi, and I was okay, I want to get into the room. And they're oh, no, don't worry about it. I'm what do you mean, don't worry? Oh, you're on Fiji time. And it just took an hour and a half for check-in. And everyone is super chill about it.
Right.
And I think we, as the island mentality.
Yeah, where people are super chill here.
Yeah. They're happy, but shit.
Yeah. So how do you build such 600 people that work hard, that deliver for Western clients? I mean, you said that I think all your clients are external.
Yes. I think
US, Australia,
90-something%. Yeah.
Right. So how do you get them to actually work?
Insane project management, right?
Right.
I think
What daily tasks? No, give us, like, I want to understand exactly, like, give me the secret sauce. Okay. What are you doing that nobody else is doing?
So I can't comment on whether anybody else is doing
Right.
Okay. I can tell you what we're
Right.
doing, right? So what has worked really well for me is, one, we've been able to position ourselves as like best in class from a brand point of view, right? Like if you come to us, work is not cheap, but you will save more money by not having the mistakes and failures of, like you said, you spent $500,000 building product.
Yeah.
You've paid way less than us, but if you actually had given us the $500,000, you would have had the product, right? So that brand, that message is clear. We have a few people at the C-level in leadership, which I consider are world-class. And
are you transparent? Does everybody in your organization know how much everyone gets paid?
So it's like this. Initially, it was super public where we had the name and the thing.
Right.
And then it was like the job descriptions had the salaries. And then what we've said is everyone is allowed to share their salaries.
Right.
Because what started happening was people got issues from their family because all their relatives found out how much money they were making.
Right.
And then internally
we have very big families.
And then suddenly they're like, everybody has my favorite cousin.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had to pull back after that. And what we said is, look, we're not going to share it. We're going to share the brackets publicly in our job descriptions. So if you choose to share your salary, that's your call, right?
Have you chosen to share your salary? I mean, you got this beautiful villa on the water. I mean, you're living,
but like, look, I mean,
a good life.
That's also because I realized that.
But you earned it.
Sorry?
You earned it. I'm not.
I'm not offended, right? Yeah. So the villa down south it's
a cash flow generating asset.
And look, I didn't buy it.
And the yields are quite high.
So what I did was I borrowed on the rupee. I assumed that the rupee is not going to do too well.
Depreciating 6 to 8% a year.
I just assume a CAGR of 6 to 8. I convinced the bank that because I don't have a house, that is my personal residence. Took a 15-year rupee loan, got it at the lowest interest rate that the country has ever had, dragged it out, and the cash flow offsets. So I basically
you're always hustling. You're a true entrepreneur. You're hustling.
I like the financial element of these.
You're a good financial engineer.
Sure, like not by qualification, but
don't be humble.
Yeah, look, I like it. It gets me going, and I really enjoy being able to kind of squeeze those levers.
Right.
And look, because it's income is not rental, it's hospitality income. Interest expense can be offset from a tax basis.
Right.
So your kind of carrying cost is virtually zero.
You're running a very high-end Airbnb.
Yes. And then the beautiful part is
you get to hang out there.
You get to hang out there and you get to gift it to your friends.
It's very nice.
And, they go in, like it cost me like $100 in fees. And then they go in there and think, oh my God, I got a $4,000 a night apartment. Like, villa, how great is that?
I felt like J-Lo.
So, I mean, I think of it as a commercial opportunity.
No, it's smart. It's smart.
But look, I think, and I don't save money from my salary.
Right.
I used to. I think that really screwed up the way I saw money in the very early stages of my career. There's a concept called FIRE. I don't know if you're familiar. Financial independence, early retirement.
Yeah.
I was really sucked into that, knee deep in Reddit threads when I grew up.
But what are you going to do then?
Yeah, and then you realize when you start working, I paid my first salary was 50,000 rupees a month, so like $100 a month-ish from Surge. And you were saving like 10-20% of that.
Right.
And like 2 years in, that's nothing.
Right.
And you really suffered to save that 10-20% of that 50K.
Right.
And then suddenly your salary 10x's and 10x's and 10x's, and you're like, oh, well, why did I do that?
Right.
Then I should have been investing in the business. And
you should have been investing in growth, not fixated about cost. And that's probably how you run your business.
That's correct. I would rather, and obviously there's a downside risk here, but I would rather out-earn the problems, which are financial, than try to kind of save it. And at one point, I understand that you need to focus on building your balance sheet.
Right.
And I think you can, and still not be too miserly in your expenses at the same time.
What do you think your one superpower is? You might have multiple, but what do you think got you? Is there something about you, besides the fact that you're incredibly smooth? Charm. Is there something about you that you feel that's my superpower?
Look, I think the only thing that I feel like if I had to compete on everyone, I think I'm pretty decent at telling a story.
Yeah, a storyteller.
And in a market that's super crowded and you need to get attention from people,
Right.
the story really helps.
Hanging out with Branson and Nectar, I mean, that's a good one, man. That's up there.
He's a nice guy.
I'm sure he is. I wouldn't know.
We should go sometime.
We should go. That would be lovely. I'd love to meet him. Sounds like a hoot. Didn't he spin the Queen Mother around once? Is that him?
Don't know that.
Okay. What is the one thing you hate about yourself? Like when when you're kind of lights are off, you're in your covers, things have gone had a really bad day, right? Where there's a self-loathing? What's the self?
Oh, I have insane amounts of self-loathing on so many different things.
We all do.
Everything from I could be doing more, I could be significantly more productive. I hate the way I look. Like I have the whole 9 yards, right? I feel like, and I know this sounds silly in context, but I do feel like I haven't done what I should be doing from a scale perspective, right?
What should you be doing?
Like I think 18 should be closer to 180.
Right. And then you would probably be the biggest in Sri Lanka.
At those numbers, yeah.
You'd be, right? You're probably top 5 now?
In Sri Lanka for what?
Revenues.
Sorry.
Bodies, revenues, whatever metric.
You mean in the technology space?
Yeah.
Probably top 5. I don't know.
Right. So 180 is a 10x from here.
Yes.
10 bagger.
Yes.
Okay. How do we do it? How do we get there?
I think the leverage component is the play. I don't think we should organically hire. I think what I will do is a pretty aggressive acquisition strategy. And I wouldn't limit myself towards acquiring things locally.
So you're doing a bit of a roll-up.
Yeah.
Financial engineering.
Yes.
Buying low multiple business, hoping for a higher multiple as you streamline, reduce costs, synergies.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we can work that through pretty easily to about 100.
Right.
And when I say easily, obviously it's a ton of work.
Right.
But from a kind of a philosophical point, it's just XYZ, 3 steps,
right.
Acquire 3 assets at 15, 20, 25 rev, and then you're done. Right. And I can do that without completely wrecking our cap table.
Right.
And I think if you can do, and this is where the story becomes really valuable, right?
Right.
Because if you're able to, any transaction at the end of the day is willing buyer, willing seller.
Right.
If you convince the delta of value, you can, the real difference is when you're doing the roll up, one, you're going in as a, let's say 5x revenue, and then the other one is going as a 3x or 4x revenue.
Right.
If you're good enough at convincing that 3x, but you're 9x, that's really the spread.
Yep.
And I think that is completely...
But wouldn't some people say that's ether? You're creating value when there's no value, right? You're essentially doing a multiple arbitrage.
Yes.
And not actually generating...
But those multiples are backed by actual cash flows with high margin and all of that.
Why is one company getting a 4x multiple on EBITDA per se, and you're getting, let's say, 10?
I think if the business is able to deliver on the growth, like you talked about CAGR, right?
Yep.
We've had an 88% CAGR over a 10-year window. If the company, the last acquisition, had a CAGR of 10, the ability that we bring to the table is the ability to tell that story effectively enough that our acquisition rates, our revenue growth is really faster.
Right.
So my argument is there's a premium for that.
Right.
Right. Now, you may argue whether that premium is an X or a Y, but we both agree that there's a premium.
Right.
So for me is to find the right partner, because we wouldn't acquire someone for the sake of acquiring someone. If we find the right partner and they understand that our history demonstrates our ability to do something, then I think it's okay.
Right.
And remember, there are tens of thousands of people in our space.
Yep.
I only need 5.
Let me ask a question. So you and I had a conversation the other day, if we could talk about it. And I introduced you to, an investor who I've worked with. Affectionately call him Mr. Big. Did you ever see Sex and the City?
I have, but
Okay. There's this recurring character called Mr. Big, kind of semi-mysterious. Then he comes in. But let's say Mr. Big was examining your business. He's, I don't know, worth $400 million, pretty successful, right? But he was asking very penetrating questions. How did you feel? Like, did you, as he, were you curious? What did you think of him?
I mean, you've given me some context about the
Right.
guy before,
Yeah.
right? So I think the article you shared me was like Elon Musk's private equity guy.
Right.
So I assumed he would have questions, and I presume that we're not going to go through this kind of dating phase to figure out who we are.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
Right.
preset by the, and then you showed me the message you sent him,
Right.
and I had noticed that you had put in enough effort to give as much information in as short of a description as possible.
Yeah.
So I figured his time is worth
Yeah.
a fair
You
bit.
have to be concise.
And I kind of assumed that he would have these questions, and I'm quite comfortable with our numbers.
Very comfortable.
And it allows, you have questions, and it's not proprietary, right? Like, it's not that the set of data we have around our financials allows us something that, like,
Right.
anything else. And I'm pretty comfortable. Like, the service provider, the consulting business model is probably one of the companies that have the lowest barrier to entry.
Right.
You can go on today, set up a website, say, I'm a consultant.
Right.
No one's stopping you. But to build something and to make it sustainable is incredibly hard. It's a balance between having the right talent, having the right work.
Yeah, the right structure and processes.
I don't think people underestimate how challenging it is.
Right.
And what happens is people go into this line of work thinking that, and this is the number one question I get asked is, how do you find clients?
Right.
And because they had just started an agency,
Right.
they had started a consulting firm, a dev shop, and now they're looking for clients. Like, you've missed the plot. The reason that you start an agency is because you have too much demand that you can't service it anyway.
Right.
You can't, it's really tough to do it the other way around.
Right.
The situation that we've gotten ourselves in is demand generation.
Right.
You came to our office
Right.
a week ago.
Yep.
No context. You had reached out to us on our website.
Right.
There was no personal introduction done by anyone.
Right.
You came in and you had a chat.
Because you had built a brand.
And
Right.
I think that is, to build something that's consistent and decades long is really tough.
Right.
And then you decided, hey, look,
Yeah.
here it is.
So when you first did your initial investment, which is $360,000 for 51%.
Technically, my first investment was 20 grand for 50%.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that story.
So I met this guy in 2013, a Swiss guy called Richard Velock. And
I hope he doesn't. Hope you're in good terms.
oh no, we are.
Okay.
A wonderful guy.
Okay.
Right. And I met him at Sri Lanka has this thing called Sri Lankan cyber games.
Right.
And I was playing League of Legends and he was playing League of Legends, and we just got to talk.
Right.
And then
Two athletes.
and then he said, look, I told him I had this idea to build this thing. It was not search, it's a different concept.
Right.
We had like a 9-gag style business for Sri Lanka, if you remember it, like BuzzFeed type thing. And I told him, look, I need 20 grand.
Right.
Well, the way I came up with the numbers, I said I need 2K a month. And then I kind of convinced him, look, pay me 2K every month so I can have enough runway. And if it's not working out, you get to pull the plug, right?
Right.
And he was okay with that. We did it. And then I ended up buying him back
like
a year and a half later for like 4 or 5 times that.
Right.
But
I bet he wish he had held on. He sold Apple or Tesla too early.
well, the other thing is, if he had held on, I don't think the business would have worked because the company wouldn't. You were right.
So, okay, so let's go back to the 360 for 51%. Let's say somebody came and offered you whatever number you think today that gets you to that 100 million. What do you think that number is today? If I said, I need to write you a check to give you the horsepower, because you can do a lot of stock for stock, but cash, to get to 100 million, how much cash would I need to give you?
I don't think I'd need a lot. I think I'd probably need, I suppose it's a weird thing to say, not a lot, but I probably need about 25 mil.
25 mil.
Because
would you sell 51% of the business for 25 mil?
Probably not.
So what is it? So why did you sell 51% for 360 and you wouldn't sell that same, not same, but obviously
I think the context of why I sold is really important in the beginning. When we got the opportunity, we were doing 60K a year in revenue.
Right.
And
so 6 times revenue.
Yes, which I thought was insane. Like,
Yeah, I think that's pretty good multiple.
and the reason it was 360 was I had said 360 market cap. They had thought 360 51%. So I accidentally doubled the valuation.
That's amazing.
But we didn't need the cash. We were cash flow positive.
Yeah.
We were lean,
Yeah.
like insanely lean.
How many people?
At the time, maybe like 5 to 10.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And when you do the numbers, you divide 60K by 10, that's $6,000 per person per year.
Right.
Not a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think when I had the first conversation with them and they introduced me to some of their portfolio companies, and the first project that we were doing was for the Gates Foundation, right? And for me, this problem was I was this 20-year-old kid in Sri Lanka that had no access to anyone, right? My parents had no commercial experience.
Do you feel like you have access to anyone you want to get to today?
I have access to you.
I mean, I'm nobody, but I'm just, I mean, do you have?
I think if I really wanted to get a hold of someone, I could. Right?
Well, what if you want to get a hold of Elon?
Pretty sure I could. But the problem is if I go talk to Elon,
what would you talk about?
What should I say, right? But I think sorry, I had to think about who the connection was.
Okay,
so tell you after the call.
Yeah. That's great.
I have a friend of mine that works at SpaceX, and that would be the
right.
But the thing is, it's without access to anyone, it was really challenging. And then here I am doing this project for this massive organization, and I didn't even know how to quote for it.
That's when Bill Gates showed up on the screen.
Right. So
you're hobnobbing with the rich and famous.
Look,
I mean, you are, right? That's nice. It's one of the perks of being a kid.
It is. And I think the reason why I probably wouldn't sell Surge today is I think technology over the next 10 years is going to be, like over the last 10 years has been critically important.
Right.
And I think over the next 10 years, it's going to be more important.
What about AI, no code, reduced code, replace AI agents? I mean, how do you see the staffing business?
Look, I think this business model will change.
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue is right now people just assume they can press a button and generate a product.
Right.
And so they're like, well, I'll only pay you $5K because you can Google it and do it, and or like
do it on Copilot,
ChatGPT or something. Yeah. But then we tell them to give it a shot and see how it goes. Look, I don't think that technology, that kind of development will be automated anytime soon.
Right.
I think it could potentially be automated.
Right.
But the role of for us is to essentially take that capital and understand the next opportunity and deploy it effectively so that the business survives, right? So I am confident in my ability and the ability of the team to be able to navigate a complete AI breakdown, right? Because forget us, Accenture has 500,000 people, Infosys has 200,000 people, McKinsey has 100,000. They're going to struggle a lot more than we're going to struggle.
Right.
And it's just a matter of understanding the uses of the team that you have and the allocation of the team against projects. So if we are realizing there's a slowdown here, and then we have looked at expanding our revenue base outside of services today, where we have our own product revenue that's flowing in as well as our own investment revenue, which is, we've taken an equity position in an energy business.
25% position. Right.
And in Australia.
That's smart.
Right. And it has nothing to do with anything we do, except we do the lead generation, and we are pretty confident that we can defeat the competition that they're facing. And for that,
you actually do the lead generation. How? With people here?
Yes.
Making outbound calls?
Ads.
So you're running the whole social media campaign.
So,
and your cost per click, your CAC, it all works out.
So Surge's business model is a balance between technology and marketing, right?
Right.
And even my skill set primarily is in the digital marketing space. So if you're better than your competition, because that's the other thing, I think people look at all of these giant opportunities and say, look, here's $1 billion idea. I don't prescribe to the idea of let's build $1 billion business. It's really straightforward to build a 10, 20, $30 million business. It's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be better than your competition.
So let's say today you lost everything. You had to build a $10 million business in Sri Lanka. How do you go about doing it? And what space do you pick, and how long would it take you?
If I start today.
Yep. Let's say you lose everything.
Yeah. Am I allowed to raise cash or no?
I mean, you can do, can do whatever.
Do I lose all the people I know?
Yeah. You lose all the people. You're, wiped out, erased. You've been moved to,
Yeah.
I don't know, Africa, Asia, someplace, dropped in. You're extradited.
So I would try to find, I'd go two routes. One, I try to find a position in a business that has figured out product market fit to some level.
Right.
And then get myself in there with enough upside where it's beyond a salary.
So equity upside.
Equity upside.
So you want to be an owner, not
At least.
right.
That would be one route. And then the second route is I'd find industries that have very little capital requirement to start.
People staffing being one.
One, it could be that. I think education, weirdly, is not that difficult.
Yep.
So I'd probably get into those industries and then start building there. Use the cash flow from the job.
Right.
And I'd find the job that's adjacent to that business so that if both works out, I can sell this to this guy. Right.
Okay, smart. I like it.
That's probably how I'd
And how long would it take you?
to build up to 10 million. I have no idea.
I'm sticking you in Vietnam where you don't speak the language.
I think the best case would be the agribusiness that we started
Right.
because it was something we had zero experience in.
And now it's doing $1 million, right?
Rev, we do 10.
10.
But obviously it's not like Surge. Gross margins are much worse, right?
Right.
Gross margins are probably like 10%.
Right. And what you're doing, you're shipping, if memory serves me right, vegetables from Sri Lanka.
We are doing
UAE.
mid-range perishables, so things that have a shelf life greater than 14 days.
Right.
And we are shipping it from UAE, from Colombo to the GCC regions.
Right.
Port is UAE, but we sell to Saudi, Oman, and all of that stuff. And now we're just expanding the source markets from Colombo to Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and India. So the plan,
And that's a side hustle.
yes, but look, there are management teams, there's leadership.
Right.
There are CFOs that have, I have a pretty good team, which is partly why it's not profitable, right? Like they're expensive.
Yeah.
But essentially, yes, it is. I would call it more of an investment than a side hustle, but it's an incubation.
Right. So let's say you had a friend who was bald, 6'2", maybe from Switzerland, maybe originally from Sri Lanka. They couldn't decide if he wanted to come back home, to his motherland and start a business. Would you say come, or would you say, you know what? This is the worst idea in the world. Stay in Switzerland, right, where things work, because, we don't have Swiss precision here, right? And we have lots of great things.
We definitely don't have Swiss
precision. But would you tell them, come, it's a Wild West, or would you say, if you don't speak Sinhala, right, because you speak beautiful Sinhala, apparently. You studied Sinhala literature, yeah, of course. Do you need to speak Sinhala to make it in Sri Lanka?
So it depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like if you're trying to, for example, if you were to do the agriculture business,
right,
you probably would not succeed.
Yeah.
Because the farmers, if you go and be like, hey, I'm from Switzerland, they'll just chase you out. Right. But if you
with my cowboy hat, that would work.
But if the objective, I think the real thing is like, what are you trying to achieve, right? Like, what do you want in life?
Let's say he wants to build a $10 million business.
Okay.
Right? Within 3 to 5 years. Okay. What does he do? And he has,
So if you look at everything, and I'll give it to you from my perspective, because that's kind of only what I can speak to. Whether it's Surge or any other project that we've started, it really kind of solves one single interface, right?
Right.
I think Sri Lankans in general are really poor communicators.
They are. Why are they so shy? Or I think you said that's because you're so loud.
Yes, because they're American, right? No, look,
it's like, why are they so timid? I can't hear them. I'm like, please speak up.
If you look at education in Sri Lanka, like even our entire schooling system, I don't know if you've learned English in Sri Lanka.
No.
They just tell you to make the sentences as complicated as possible.
Right.
So that you sound more knowledgeable or more aware. In reality, that's the exact opposite of how you should communicate.
But where did you get this posh British accent? It makes you feel more aware, so more knowledgeable. I mean, it's very nice.
My posh British accent,
because you didn't grow up in England.
No. So
you didn't go to British prep school.
I went to, when I was 5 years old, my dad was in Sydney and Melbourne for his post-grad training. Right. So I lived there for 2 years. So when I lived in Melbourne, I was about 4 or 5.
Right.
And when I came back, I couldn't speak Sinhala. So I had to come back and learn how to speak Sinhala.
Wow.
So when I came back straight into grade 2s.
Right.
Oh, it was so funny. So when I went to Melbourne, I went to this primary school called Essendon. And in Essendon, because I couldn't speak English because I was a 4 or 5-year-old, right? Like, I was talking to those kids in Sinhala, and then they were talking to me in English, and they somehow
Communicated. That's great.
communicated.
Kids are great.
And over time, I learned my entire kind of vocabulary and all of that came from that. And when I came back, I couldn't speak Sinhala because I was there for 2 years and I never used Sinhala when I was in Australia. And then after that, the YouTube thing, you create a bunch of videos.
Did you do it in Sinhala or in English?
I did it in English. And then you realize your comments section keeps on shitting on you for not being clear enough.
Right.
And 360 videos later,
You were an auto.
yeah, it's kind of like, so you can actually go through the videos from year 1 to year to the end.
Yeah.
You notice a slide.
And how many videos did it take for you to be like, I got this?
Probably 300-400, yeah.
300-400. Oh man, so I'm screwed because I'll probably be dead by the time I'm so much older than you. That by the time I get 300 or 400,
I videos now it's just like
what were you putting? It must be putting on one a week.
1 a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long?
About 30-40 minutes each.
Wow. Okay.
Because the YouTube channel, like
makes you
videos, you're just talking, you're blabbering on, right?
Right.
I think the difference between then and now is I try to incorporate something of substance rather than just speak for the sake of speaking.
Right.
But yeah, it was a fair amount of work. So the language is a bastardization between the Australian accent, the Sri Lankan accent, the YouTube kind of forcing you to adapt to American accent, some weird mix in the middle.
So you think my friend,
Yes.
my Swiss friend, can come, Swiss Sri Lankan friend,
So I think the
can he
Swiss
come here? Can he come here? And without Sinhala, I mean, his Tamil's okay.
Absolutely.
But could he build a business?
Absolutely. I think what the bigger question is not that. The bigger question is, what does he want to come here and do? Right?
What would you do? You were, 20, whatever, 20.
I would try to meet as many people as possible.
That's easy.
I would talk to them and figure out what they're doing and say if any of that is even remotely interesting.
Right.
Like I didn't start and say I wanted to be in consulting.
Right.
I didn't, like, it just kind of followed a natural progression.
Would you start a consulting business or a software business today if you were him? Not a competitor. Soon.
No, I mean, look, we have enough competitors. I don't have an issue with that. I probably wouldn't because I don't have a clear advantage. I would look for something where I had that advantage.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you need something that puts you ahead of everyone else.
What's your edge?
Yeah. And for me, I think when I started, it was the storytelling ability. And I think as time went on, weirdly, I think there's a little bit of financial prowess there that has allowed us to kind of push forward beyond what the kind of industry does. But I would find what that edge is. And I would, like when you're playing a video game, you optimize stats for a meta. When you, are you putting all your points on attack, defense, speed, or whatever? Right. School tells you to balance your stat pool.
Right.
So that you don't have a single stat that's too low.
Right.
Right. Whereas the reality of the market is you actually have to put all your points on one stat. If you're going attack, go all attack. If you're going defense, go all defense.
So what you're saying is if you're going to take the island, you've got to burn the ships.
Yes.
So you're an all-in type of guy.
Personally, yes.
What, if you were to advise, let's say, young entrepreneurs, how important is that all-in, balls to the wall?
So caveat.
Yeah.
I want to kind of also recognize the fact that I had a safety net.
Which was?
Like if
your parents?
Yeah. So if all things fails, I had a roof over my head. I don't have to pay for food. Like if I was, if I had 3 siblings and my dad had passed away and I have a single mom working, I would not give that advice. I think that's terrible advice, right? Personally, I am more of an slightly more obsessive just because I think it's easier when you go all in.
Right.
Rather than kind of doing little by little. If you can afford to take that risk, I think you should.
That's great. That's great advice. Let's say Because it sounds like what you want to do is you want to build legacy. I mean, what drives it? Is it money?
Well, no.
What's the end goal?
I want to build something quite remarkable on this part of the world, right?
In this part of the world. So it's legacy.
Sure.
With your name attached to it. And maybe, is it generational legacy or is it Bhanuka and then done?
Look, I haven't thought about this. I think I'm young enough to not have kids and not sure this problem.
Of just, yeah.
I can talk it away.
I'm jealous. All right. So let's just say everything was wiped clean.
Yep.
Right? What is the one piece of advice that you would give? And then lastly, what is the one thing you want to be remembered for? Like when people show up, hopefully, you live to be, you'll upload your consciousness to a machine like all of us.
Sure, Neuralink will do
Neuralink will do something. But let's just say, what would that be? Here lies Bhanuka and he was...
Look, I think I don't have a grand vision how I want other people to be remembering me of. And to be very honest, I don't care, right? I think if
you didn't care if they think you're a good guy or bad guy. Look, you're an honest guy. You are.
I think
you made a positive impact on the planet.
Look, I think Sri Lanka has had a really rough set of circumstances,
right?
And it's that kind of compounding bad decisions, right?
Right.
And really, a lot of this strife comes from like commercial situations that we've made poor decisions on. If I can help push that in that pendulum the other way, like a little bit, I think that's a pretty good outcome.
And no interest in politics?
No. Not my cup of tea.
Okay. Last thing. Piece of advice for older young entrepreneurs, Sri Lankan or otherwise. Any last?
Look, I think realistically, if you are in a situation where you can go all in, figure out one thing that you're really good at, better than everyone else.
YOLO.
Go all in. And if you can't, go all in.
Not with your stock portfolio. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
But if you can't go all in, build yourself up to a situation that you can.
Right.
Because realistically, you do need a differentiator. Because if not, it's really tough to win in a crowded market. And your market's not Sri Lanka, right? Figure out what you're the best at in the world.
It has to be external facing to get true scale.
Look, maybe 10 mil you can do here, but really, like, you have a very limited...
How many coconuts can you possibly sell?
Funny you should mention.
Quite a few hypers.
About 25 mil.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dollars.
Yes.
Okay. Internally.
Yes. Not internally.
Okay.
We run out of production capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good to know. Well, Bhanuka, that was great, man. Thank you for letting me stay at his amazing villa. The Willikama.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was great. That's fun. We should do this again. When you get to the next level, or hopefully sooner. It's great. Thank you, man. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.